Ask 10 people what they should do to protect their kidneys, and most will give you the same answer. Drink more water and eat less salt. Both pieces of advice matter, but they leave out a decision many people make every evening without thinking about it. Dinner is finished, the house becomes quiet, the television comes on, and suddenly you want one last thing to eat. For one person, it is a bowl of ice cream. For another, it is crackers, chips, cookies, or sweet cereal. That final snack may look small, but when it happens every night, it can quietly add a great deal of sodium, refined sugar, and excess energy to the week. Here is the part I want to make clear from the beginning. There is no fruit that repairs damaged kidneys while you sleep, and the clock does not turn food into medicine. Your kidneys do not need a bedtime detox, a miracle powder, or a secret cleansing drink. What they need is much less dramatic: controlled blood pressure, controlled blood sugar, appropriate use of medication, sensible portions, and food choices that do not create unnecessary work. But the last thing you eat can still matter because it can either reinforce those goals or work against them. A small bowl of whole fruit is very different from a salty snack or a dessert loaded with added sugar. So today, I want to walk you through 8 fruits that can fit a kidney-conscious evening routine. Some are naturally lower in potassium and easier to use when kidney function is under strain. Some provides fiber that helps you feel satisfied without turning your snack into a second dinner. Some contain plant compounds that support blood vessel health as part of an overall healthy diet. And one group can be helpful for certain people but completely wrong for others, depending on potassium levels, medications, and the type of kidney problem involved. Stay with me for that one, because this is where simple internet advice can become dangerous. Before we begin, let us look at what the kidneys are actually protecting. Each kidney contains roughly 1 million microscopic filtering units called nephrons. Inside each nephron is a tiny bundle of blood vessels called a glomerulus. Imagine a very fine strainer that allows water and small waste molecules to pass, while holding back blood cells and useful proteins. That filter works all day, every day, processing an enormous amount of blood. It also helps regulate fluid, sodium, potassium, acid balance, blood pressure, red blood cell production, and bone health. The kidneys are not just wastebaskets. They are part filter, part chemistry laboratory, and part pressure control system. Those tiny filters are strong, but they are not indestructible. High blood pressure can damage their delicate vessels. High blood sugar can injure the filtering barrier. Smoking, heart disease, repeated dehydration, certain infections, and some medications can add more stress. Once a large number of nephrons are permanently lost, the remaining ones have to carry more of the workload. That is why protecting the kidneys usually does not come down to one heroic action. It is a collection of ordinary choices repeated for years. A little less sodium, better diabetes control, careful use of pain relievers, regular testing, and more thoughtful food choices. There is one more rule you need before we reach the fruit. A food that is kidney-friendly for one person may not be kidney-friendly for another. Healthy kidneys usually remove extra potassium efficiently. Kidneys that are severely damaged may not. Some people need to limit potassium, while others do not need any restriction at all. People on different forms of dialysis may even receive different advice, so do not use this list as a prescription. Use it as a guide for a conversation with your clinician or renal dietitian, especially if you already have chronic kidney disease. The first fruit is the blueberry, and this is where I would begin for the widest number of people. The deep blue and purple color comes largely from plant pigments called anthocyanins. These compounds belong to the polyphenol family, and they are studied because colorful plant foods are associated with healthier blood vessels and lower oxidative stress. That matters to the kidneys because the kidneys are packed with tiny vessels. Supporting cardiovascular health and kidney health is often the same conversation viewed from two different directions. Blueberries are also practical. In a modest serving, they are relatively low in potassium. Compared with many other fruits, naturally low in sodium. You do not need a supplement made from blueberry extract. You do not need an expensive powder. Half a cup of fresh or frozen blueberries is enough to create a satisfying evening snack. Frozen berries without syrup work perfectly well and often make the snack feel more like dessert. The mistake is what people add around them. Blueberry pie is not the same as blueberries. A sweetened blueberry yogurt with a long ingredient list may contain far more added sugar than the fruit itself. A giant smoothie made with several cups of fruit can turn a light snack into a very large carbohydrate load. Keep the idea simple. Put half a cup in a small bowl, let frozen berries soften for a few minutes, and eat them slowly. If plain yogurt fits your plan, add a spoonful. The goal is not to build a health food sundae. The goal is to replace the cookie or the ice cream without feeling that you have been punished. The second fruit is the apple, and it protects your routine in a completely different way. The apple is not exciting enough for most health headlines. It does not come from a rare mountain. It does not need to be imported as a powder. It is ordinary, inexpensive, and available almost everywhere. That is exactly why it works. A habit only protects you when it is simple enough to repeat. One of the most useful parts of an apple is its fiber, including a soluble fiber called pectin. When pectin reaches the large intestine, it becomes food for the bacteria living there. The gut and kidneys are not separate worlds. Substances produced in the intestine can enter the bloodstream, and the kidneys help remove many of them. A diet built mostly from heavily processed, low-fiber food can create a less favorable gut environment. Adding whole plant foods does not cure kidney disease, but it can support a healthier overall pattern and improves fullness, bowel regularity, and blood sugar control. It takes time to finish. With juice, several apples can disappear into one glass, and most of the fiber is gone. The sugar arrives quickly, but the experience does not feel like eating several pieces of fruit. If you want an evening apple, choose a small or medium one, keep the skin on after washing it, and slice it thinly. A little cinnamon makes it feel like dessert without adding sugar. If you have diabetes, the carbohydrate still counts, but the intact fruit is usually a far more controlled choice than juice, cookies, or sweet cereal. The third fruit is the strawberry. Strawberries work well at night because they deliver a strong sense of sweetness with a large amount of water and a relatively modest calorie load. They provide vitamin C and several plant compounds, including anthocyanins and ellagic acid. You do not need to remember those names. What matters is the larger pattern. Deeply colored berries can be part of a heart-healthy diet. And protecting the heart also protects the circulation that feeds the kidney. In reasonable portions, strawberries are also commonly included among lower potassium fruit choices. That does not mean unlimited. Portion size can turn almost any food into a very different nutritional load. Half a cup of sliced strawberries is a light snack. An entire large container eaten while watching television is no longer a small serving, even though every individual berry still looks harmless. There is another trap here. Some people start with strawberries and then add whipped topping, chocolate sauce, sweetened condensed milk, sugary granola, and several spoonfuls of flavored yogurt. At that point, the fruit has become decoration. A better evening version is 4 or 5 sliced strawberries with a small spoonful of plain yogurt and a light dusting of cinnamon. Cut the berries into smaller pieces and eat them with a spoon. The same portion lasts longer, and the bowl feels more complete. That small behavioral trick often matters more than another lecture about willpower. Number 4 is the red or purple grape. The color matters because many of the plant compounds are concentrated in the skin. Red and purple grapes contain anthocyanins and resveratrol, a compound that has become famous in discussions about healthy aging. Resveratrol is often marketed with promises that go far beyond the evidence. A handful of grapes is not a drug, and it will not reverse blood vessel disease. But grapes can still fit comfortably into a dietary pattern that supports cardiovascular health And cardiovascular health is inseparable from kidney health. The heart sends blood to the kidneys, and the kidneys help control fluid and blood pressure. When one system struggles, the other often pays a price. That is why a fruit that helps replace a heavily processed snack can be useful even without acting like a medicine. The problem with grapes is that they are extremely easy to overeat. 30 grapes can disappear in minutes because each one feels tiny. The answer is not to fear them. The answer is to decide the portion before you sit down. Put 10 to 15 grapes in a small bowl and return the rest to the refrigerator. Eat the skin instead of peeling it. If you enjoy a cold dessert, freeze them and let them soften slightly before eating. Frozen grapes take longer to finish and may satisfy the desire for ice cream. Just be cautious with sensitive teeth, swallowing difficulty, and choking risk. A good choice is only good when it is safe for the person eating it. Before I give you the fifth fruit, notice what has happened so far. We have not relied on a magical ingredient. Apples bring fiber and make an easy replacement for processed snacks. Strawberries provide volume and sweetness without becoming heavy. Grapes can satisfy the desire for dessert when the portion is controlled. Kidney protection often looks exactly like this: ordinary food doing ordinary work consistently. If this is the first time someone has explained the difference between a kidney-friendly fruit and a fruit marketed as a kidney-cure, take a second to subscribe and leave a like. And send this video to the person in your family who believes that anything labeled natural must be safe in unlimited amounts. Natural foods can be very healthy, but kidney nutrition still depends on portions, laboratory results, and medication. The fifth fruit is the cranberry, and this is one of the most misunderstood fruits on the list. Most people connect cranberries with urinary tract infections. There is a legitimate reason for that association, but the story is more specific than the advertising suggests. Cranberries contain compounds called A-type proanthocyanidins. These may make it harder for certain bacteria to attach to the lining of the urinary tract. For some people with recurrent infections, cranberry products may help reduce the chance of another episode. But cranberries do not replace antibiotics when an infection is already present. They do not treat a kidney infection, they do not dissolve stones, and they do not reverse chronic kidney disease. If you have fever, pain on the back or side, vomiting, burning urination, or worsening weakness, that is a medical problem, not the cranberry juice problem. The other issue is sugar. Cranberries are naturally very tart, so manufacturers often make them easier to drink or eat by adding a surprising amount of sweetener. Cranberry cocktail can behave more like a soft drink than a health beverage. Many dried cranberries are also heavily sweetened. Read the label instead of trusting the picture on the front. A small splash of pure, unsweetened cranberry juice diluted with water may be enough. A tablespoon of unsweetened dried cranberries can add tartness to a berry bowl. More is not necessarily better, and anyone taking medicines with possible interaction should check with a pharmacist before using concentrated products regularly. The sixth fruit is the tart cherry. Tart cherries have attracted attention for sleep, exercise recovery, gout, and uric acid. Some studies suggest cherry products may influence uric acid or the frequency of gout attacks. Other research has found smaller effects or no clear change in blood urate. So this is a place where honest advice matters. Tart cherries are interesting, but they are not a substitute for gout medication, and they are not proven to stop kidney disease. What they do provide is a group of colorful plant compounds, along with small amounts of naturally occurring melatonin. Some people enjoy an unsweetened tart cherry product as part of an evening routine and feel that it helps them settle down. That does not make it a sleeping pill. It simply makes it an option that may fit the ritual of replacing dessert or a sweet drink. The form determines whether this remains a sensible choice. Whole tart cherries, when available, are very different from a large glass of concentrated sweetened juice. Concentrates can contain much more carbohydrate than the serving suggests. Dried fruit is concentrated as well. A small handful can represent a much larger amount of fresh fruit. If you use juice, choose unsweetened and keep the amount small, perhaps a splash diluted in water. If you use dried tart cherries, check the added sugar and measure the portion instead of eating from the bag. When a food begins to behave like a supplement, it deserves the same caution you would give a supplement. Number 7 is pineapple, and it often surprises people because they assume sweet tropical fruit must be high in potassium. In modest portions, pineapple can fit into many lower potassium plans more easily than foods such as bananas or large amounts of dried fruit. It also brings a powerful flavor, which is useful when someone feels that a kidney-conscious diet has become bland and repetitive. Online, bromelain is sometimes described as if it can clean the kidneys or remove inflammation from the body overnight. That is not a responsible promise. Eating pineapple has not been shown to repair damaged nephron. What pineapple can do is give you a whole food dessert with vitamin C, water, and strong flavor, allowing you to use a small portion and still feel satisfied. Half a cup of fresh or frozen pineapple chunks is enough for most evening snacks. Canned pineapple can also work when it is packed in water or its own juice rather than heavy syrup. Drain the liquid instead of drinking it. The syrup is not made healthier by sitting next to fruit. Pineapple is acidic, so it may worsen heartburn when eaten close to bed. If you notice reflux, move this fruit earlier in the day. The correct food at the wrong time for your digestion is no longer the correct choice. Now we come to number 8, and this is the fruit category that requires the most individualized advice. Citrus. Oranges, mandarins, lemons, limes, and grapefruit are sometimes presented as perfect kidney foods. In other places, people with kidney concerns are told to avoid them completely. Both statements are too simple. Citrus can be useful for certain people who form kidney stones because lemon and lime juice contain citrate. Citrate can bind with calcium in the urine and help stop some crystals from growing and clumping together. That is why a clinician may recommend a citrate-containing strategy for someone with a particular stone pattern. But preventing certain stones is not the same as treating chronic kidney disease, and a correct plan depends on urine chemistry, stone type, fluid needs, medication, and other medical conditions. Oranges and orange juice also contain potassium. For a person with healthy kidneys, potassium from whole foods can be part of a healthy diet and may support normal blood pressure, nerve function, and muscle function. For a person with advanced kidney disease, however, potassium may build up because the kidneys cannot remove it efficiently. High potassium can disturb the heart rhythm, and it does not always announce itself with a dramatic warning symptom. Some blood pressure and heart medicines can also raise potassium. Those medicines are not automatically harmful. In fact, many are extremely important for protecting the heart and kidneys. The lesson is that diet and medication have to be considered together. If you have been told that your potassium is high, if you are on dialysis, or if you take a medicine that affects potassium, do not increase oranges or orange juice because a video described citrus as healthy. Ask your clinician what your latest potassium result means for you. Grapefruit deserves a separate warning because it can change how the body processes several medications. The interaction depends on the exact drug, and it can sometimes make the level of medicine too high or too low. Before turning grapefruit into a daily habit, check your prescription list with a pharmacist. This is the dividing line between useful nutrition advice and careless nutrition advice. Useful advice respects the individual. Careless advice assumes one fruit is right for everyone. Before I give you the evening recipe, I want to tell you about a woman I will call Margaret. She was 69, retired from teaching, and generally active. Her kidney tests were not in the range of kidney failure, but her filtration number had slowly moved downward, and her blood pressure had become harder to control. She was frightened because she thought she had done everything correctly. She did not smoke, rarely drank alcohol, and believed she ate very little salt. When we looked carefully at her routine, the problem was not one dramatic meal. It was the quiet ending to almost every day. Around 9 o'clock, she made tea and opened a box of crackers. Some nights she added cheese. Other nights she chose ice cream because she believed dairy was better than salty food. She never considered it a full meal, but the habit delivered extra sodium, sugar, and calories 7 nights a week. We did not give Margaret a miracle tonic. We changed the pattern. On some evenings, she ate half an apple with cinnamon. On others, she used a small bowl of blueberries and strawberries with plain yogurt. If she was not actually hungry, she closed the kitchen after dinner and drank only the amount of fluid that fit her medical plan. She also began taking a short walk after dinner and started checking her blood pressure at consistent times. Months later, her kidneys had not grown back, and no one promised they would. But her blood pressure improved, her weight moved in the right direction, and her kidney numbers remained stable rather than continuing the same downward trend. Was that because blueberries contain a secret compound that repaired her filters at night? It was because one small change improved several parts of her routine at once. She ate less sodium, less added sugar, and fewer excess calories. She moved more. She measured her pressure. The fruit was not magic. The replacement was powerful. Now let me give you the simple recipe I promised. I call it the Quiet Evening Berry Bowl, and it takes less than 3 minutes. Start with 1/4 cup of blueberries. Add 4 sliced strawberries. Add 2 tablespoons of diced apple for texture. If dairy fits your plan, add 2 or 3 tablespoons of plain, unsweetened yogurt. Finish with cinnamon. That is the whole recipe. There is no honey, no syrup, no sweetened granola, and no giant blender. The fruit portion stays modest, and the bowl gives you sweetness, color, and texture without becoming a second dinner. Eat it slowly 1 or 2 hours before bed if you are genuinely hungry, and if eating at that time does not worsen reflux or interfere with your medical plan. You can change the bowl without changing the principle. On an apple night, use half a small apple with cinnamon and a spoonful of plain yogurt. On a hot evening, use 10 partially thawed red grapes or a small serving of frozen blueberries. When you want a tropical flavor, combine 1/3 cup of pineapple with several strawberry slices. If your clinician has approved citrus and your potassium is appropriate, you can have a few orange segments separately. Notice that every version begins with the portion. You do not bring the entire bag or container to the sofa and hope willpower appears later. There is another question more important than which fruit you choose. Do you actually need a bedtime snack? Some people eat at night because of genuine hunger. Others eat because the television is on, the day was stressful, or the habit has become automatic. Whole fruit is usually a better choice than chips. But no snack may be the right choice when dinner already met your needs. People with reflux may sleep better when they stop eating several hours before lying down. People with diabetes may need a planned snack based on glucose readings and medication. The right timing depends on the person. I also want to correct 4 common myths before we finish. The first myth is that drinking a huge amount of water before bed flushes the kidneys. For many people, it simply causes repeated trips to the bathroom and broken sleep. Some people need more fluid, while others with heart failure or advanced kidney disease may have a fluid limit. The correct amount should match your medical condition. The second myth is that natural sugar does not count. Whole fruit is different from candy because it comes with fiber, water, vitamins, and plant compounds. But the carbohydrate still exists, and portions still matter, especially if blood sugar is high. The third myth is that low potassium means unlimited. A very large amount of a lower potassium fruit can still create a substantial potassium load. The fourth myth is that a kidney cleanse can remove years of damage. It cannot. Some herbs and supplements sold as cleanses may actually harm the kidneys or interact with medication. If you are over 60, have diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, or a family's history of kidney failure, do not wait for a fruit list to tell you whether your kidneys are healthy. Ask whether you have had two important tests. The first is a blood test used to calculate estimated glomerular filtration rate, or eGFR. The second is the urine albumin to creatinine ratio, or UACR. One gives information about filtering function. The other looks for albumin leaking through the filters. You often need both. A single unusual result does not always mean chronic kidney disease. Dehydration, acute illness, intense exercise, and medication changes can affect the numbers temporarily. REMS and repeat testing matter. That is also why symptoms are not enough. A person can feel well and still have early kidney damage. Regular blood pressure checks, blood tests, and urine testing find problems that no fruit or symptom checklist can reveal. Let us bring the 8 choices together. Blueberries offer a practical berry option with a modest potassium load in a controlled serving. Apples bring fiber and make one of the easiest replacements for processed snacks. Strawberries provide sweetness and volume without feeling heavy. Red and purple grapes can satisfy the desire for dessert when you measure the portion first. Cranberries may help reduce recurrent urinary infection risk for some people, but heavily sweetened products can defeat the purpose. Tart cherries are an interesting whole food option, but they should not be marketed as a kidney treatment. Pineapple gives strong flavor in a small serving, though reflux may change the timing. Citrus may support certain stone prevention plans, but potassium and medication interactions mean that personal advice matters. So here is what I want you to do tonight. Look at the snack you normally eat after dinner. Do not judge yourself, just look honestly. Check the sodium and added sugar on the label. Decide whether you are truly hungry. If you are, choose one modest serving of whole fruit and put it into a bowl before you begin eating. Then write down one question for your next medical appointment. Is my potassium level normal? And do I need any fruit restrictions? That single question prevents 2 opposite mistakes. It protects the person with high potassium from following unsafe generic advice, and it protects the person with normal potassium from avoiding nutritious foods unnecessarily. Kidney nutrition should not be built on fear. It should be built on test results, portions, and habits that can survive real life. This video is educational. It cannot diagnose kidney disease. Choose your potassium target or replace advice from a clinician and renal dietitian who know your history, medications, and laboratory results. If you have swelling around the eyes or legs, persistent foamy urine, blood in the urine, sharply reduced urination, severe weakness, chest pain, or shortness of breath, do not try to solve the problem with food. Seek medical care. Tell me in the comments which evening snack is hardest for you to replace, and whether you have ever had both your eGFR and urine albumin checked. If this explanation helped you understand the difference between kidney-friendly food and kidney marketing, subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who believes that every natural food is automatically safe for every person. Your kidneys work quietly, and protecting them usually looks quiet too. One smaller portion, one better label, one blood pressure reading, one short walk, one evening choice repeated until it becomes normal.